Hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. If you cannot, please send comments. Um, Welcome to today's SCI PEACE Chats. I am Jeremy. I'm a volunteer in GAIA Kosovo. GAIA is the official branch of SCI in the country, Kosovo. And I will talk a bit about me and what we do in this program. In the program that I am in Mitrovica. If you saw the post about the short description, you have a small overview of what we are doing, but I will go more into details. But first, about me, I came to Kosovo 2 years ago, but I started in another program in Gračanica, where I was part of a small non-formal education center that we have for Roma children. But then a few months later, with other people, we started a program in the city of Mitrovica that is more directly linked to peace, and that's why I decided to talk about this today. But to understand more what we do, I think you need to understand what is the particular situation of Mitrovica. And if you're not from Kosovo, you might not know about this city. But you might know that 20 years ago, there has been a war in Kosovo. I will not go into details. I invite you to do your own research if you're interested in it. But very broadly, it was a war between Albanians and Serbs, two ethnic groups that are inhabiting the territory of Kosovo. And what happened during the war in Mitrovica and after the war is that there has been a separation where those two communities live. So in the south of the city, there is mostly Albanians, and in the north, there is mostly Serbs. And they live each other on those two parts of the city, and they don't really communicate, they don't really interact with each other. And they're all separated by a river. There is a river flowing in the middle of the city, and there is a main bridge where anyone can cross by foot. There is no issue, no checkpoint, no one stopping you physically. But what we observe is that they don't actually cross the bridge to, go see the other side or to meet people from the other side. And the point of our program is to find ways for the people from both sides, especially the youth, to meet each other, sometimes for the first time, to just some Serbs meeting Albanians for the first time, and vice versa. So there are multiple ways to do that, and we are trying to find innovative ways and to create what we call safe spaces for them to meet, to feel comfortable on the spot, and not feeling threatened by anything. So we are trying to build trust with the people of Mitrovica, with the cultural organizations, and with the citizens, and especially the youth, so that they would agree to follow us and meet someone else. What we observe is that there's a lot of people who actually don't know much about the other side and about the other community. They get their information mostly through their own media. So Albanians are following Albanian media and Serbian media for obvious reason of language barrier. But there is then an issue that the information they get are most of the time one-sided, and they don't get the whole story, the whole point of view. They don't really understand the other community. We're trying to kind of bring knowledge by just bringing, an alternative perspective that they would not have. But for this, what we prefer to do is that they would meet each other, that they would meet someone from the other side that they never met before, because once again, they don't have really physical contact. And the other thing that we observe that is a real obstacle to, our peace work and this bringing together endeavors is that they're a bit afraid. It's not just that they don't know the other side, that it's that they're afraid of the other side. So they don't really feel comfortable going physically in a part of their city, of their own city that they don't know, because everything is different. The people are different, the language is different, And because they've heard so many stories about how dangerous it can be for them, about how the other side is racist toward them, etc. And that's why we want them to meet the people from the other communities. It's because once you meet them and you understand that they're basically other human beings with the same, similar taste and similar, what to say, like fears and apprehensions about the life, and they have the same issues on both sides, issues of unemployment, of criminality, and everything that is not worse on one or the other, and that they understand that actually they have much more to share than to, be to disagree about. So we're trying really, our main goal is for them to meet each other, and that, they can have a small talk, a small time to exchange. We have different ways to do that. We're an organization, so we can afford to like organize events. What we did, and I like to mention this example because I think it's a good one to understand a bit the situation and how we try to tackle it. Um, it's storytelling events. We called it storytelling caravan because every month we changed the side of the city. We did one event in the south, one in the north, in the south, in the north, and we invited people of a certain age that they have been living in the city for very long, and we had speakers from different ethnic groups coming in the same place and talking about their life, how it was before the war, how it changed after the war. But what we did is that we asked them to talk about something not at all related to politics, to war, to peace, to all those divisive uh, subjects and a bit taboo topics. Um, so we invited them to talk about what it is to be a woman in Mitrovica, what it was in the 60s, 70s, how it is now, how did it change. We invited them to talk about what is it to do music, to make music in Mitrovica. Mitrovica was a very important place for jazz and rock and roll in the earlier decades. And what does it mean? How did it go? And we didn't push them to talk about, meeting each other and making peace or anything. But most of the time, since they were talking about before the war, they came to the same conclusion that they used to live together, all together, without any problem, and that if it was possible in the time, it would be possible again. What was interesting is that we had a lot of young people coming to those events from both sides and who actually learned a lot about their own city, stories that they never saw anything about in books or in media, in TV, in internet. And we just gave voice to those people from around the city, and they had something to say. Um, this is something that is very interesting, is that sometimes you don't need much to just learn about your own community and the other communities. You just need a chat. And so part of our work as volunteers is actually informal. It's actually fun. It's just we're making friends on both sides of the city, and then we go to them regularly. We drink beers, we drink a bit of coffee when it's not the evening, and we invite them to come to the other side with us. And when they feel comfortable enough, they just cross the bridge and they meet other people. And it's not part of any event. It's not something we can call thing. It's just we're being those intermediaries, mediators between two sides who don't know much about each other. And the point of my talk today is so that you could understand a bit more about Mitrovica, because it's a very specific example, very interesting, fascinating, but it's also an extreme case because we can see the division with a line, a geographic line. You can put it on a map. It's not the case everywhere, but I think in all the countries of Europe and of the world today, sadly, we can see the lines of divisions. We can belong to a community, and it's okay to be proud of your culture and your history, but at the same time it doesn't mean you need to exclude the others. And that's something that we see a lot, that you build your identity by exclusion, by differentiation of the other side. And what I invite everyone to do is to actually take a bit upon oneself and go towards the other, go to have a talk with someone from a community that you don't know much about, that you have some ideas about, but you never actually met them. And once you've done that and you have some friends from one community who say something about another community, you can repeat the same thing I'm doing, is that you will bring them to have coffee with someone that they don't know much about, that they're afraid about, anything like this. uh, I could point at names and names of communities or anything. I will just give one example that would talk to throughout Europe at least, is the issue of refugees, for instance. A lot of people have a lot of ideas about refugees and why they come here, and they're afraid of them. A lot of people are afraid of refugees. The first thing they should do is to actually go and meet them and have a talk and try to understand why they are here. So this is just an example because it's one that crosses my mind and that affects a lot of countries throughout Europe and even throughout the world. Uh, but I think we all have some work to do ourselves to go towards the other and learn from the other. And we observe that once someone meets, like once a Serb meets an Albanian, all the stereotypes just go down because they instinctively they just understand that they're pretty much similar. They're young people wanting to have fun, who like sport, music, whatever, and they can talk about something else than politics for once. So thank you for being here. I see some questions already, so I will read Genti. What do you find most challenging for you as a foreign volunteer in this situation? So it's an interesting one because being a foreigner, like an international volunteer in Mitrovica, is at the same time something good that helps the work, and at the same time it can be very tricky. So it's tricky because obviously I'm not from here. So I'm talking about things that did not personally affect me. And sometimes you can hear things in the sense, people would say, you cannot talk about those things that you haven't lived. You cannot really understand me and my relationship with the other community because you have not been through a war. And that's true. For transparency, I'm French. In the last 20 years, there was no war. I've lived a pretty comfortable life in France. And indeed, there is nothing that I can relate to in my intimacy, in my intimate life. And at the same time, the perks of being an international volunteer in Mitrovica is that I have also at the same time this neutral stance. It's that since I was not here, I don't really take side to one or another. And that is most respected by a lot of people. And I can play naive sometimes. I can say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. And most of the time it's true. I didn't know some things that are being told to me. I learn stories every day, and often it's sad stories. But at the same time, since I'm neutral, I can make friends easily on both sides. It's not the case if, for instance, you're an Albanian and you want to go north and make friends. It doesn't really happen like this. It's very hard because you don't know the other side, you don't know the language of this other side of the city, and you don't know where to begin. I don't know, you could just enter a bar and start talking to people, but that's a bit weird. So that's what we are trying to do in GAIA, is that we are the bridge. We are bringing the opportunity, just because a lot of young people that we meet, they're telling us, I've never been to the other side, I've never met someone from the other community, but I would like to actually. It's just I don't have the chance to do that. So we provide the opportunity. I think the fact that we are internationals, it helps regarding this because it's easier for us to just move around the city without restriction and without fear of anything. So it's at the same time a burden and something good. But of course, this is something that could be done by local volunteers also, and we have local volunteers doing the job with us. And that's why I'm also inviting people from every country, because this is something you can do anywhere, from every community towards any community. So I read Yethron, local integration and tribal inclusion is a big concept in peace building. Up, and then he's talking about Kenya. I'm not sure. I don't see. I see the question after. Do you think to volunteer you need to have local experience with your country before joining international volunteering? Does this build any concept in volunteering? Um, it's an interesting question. Actually, before going to Kosovo 2 years ago, I was only a student. I have never volunteered. Uh, I was part of some political movements. I took part in activist work, but not really into volunteering per se. I didn't go into an organization like I'm doing today. So I would say that no, you don't need. You should go volunteer if you feel comfortable enough. You should go volunteer in a structure that is in another country. It's totally okay. But you need to understand that you need a certain time of adaptation. I needed a few months to understand Kosovo, and only basically I understood not everything. Um, and this is always better if you have an experience of helping out in an organization before in your own country, but this is not necessary. But at the same time, what I would say is that you should always listen very carefully to what the local volunteers and the local organizations have to say about the work you want to do, and you need to take their voice into account because they really know what they are talking about. They've been in the country forever, and they know what is at stake and what you should not do also. This is something important to bear in mind, especially when you talk about topics like what we are addressing in Mitrovica. You cannot say anything very easily. You cannot just, there are some things that you learn should not be told and should not be said and should not be done. It can be very stupid things, but just the name of cities are in different languages, and using one and not the other can be a symbol also. So it's a lot of things you need to learn about what you do every day and how you conduct your work and how you talk to people. This, of course, it's better if you know the country from the beginning. If you don't know the country, you can still volunteer. I think it's really okay, but at the same time, please be mindful of what the local people have to tell you and have, like I said, this neutral standpoint. I see Esther. Jeremy, I think most people's reactions are positive in your activities, but in the case that something goes wrong, how do you usually proceed? It's an interesting question, and I expected that someone would ask, did everything always go right, or was there incidents or anything? We actually never had incidents very linked to, inter-ethnic relations. No one came to be very racist or anything. And we understand that, and this is something I saw in some lectures by some professors actually saying the same, is that when you bring people in a room that are from two sides of, let's say, one of the Balkanic wars, and who have, a lot of grief and a lot of trauma from their past, and they are coming together and they are in a room. Usually, they will be very careful about what they say because they don't want conflict to erupt in this small place because they're not in a group. Usually, when you have nationalistic behavior, it's usually in a group, not one person alone. Not always the case, but most of the time. So actually, this is not something we have to be confronted to most of the time because the people who are willing to come with us, to be part of our events, they know that there will be someone else and they don't come to provoke anyone. They don't try to spark conflict or anything. Of course, it's something that can happen. As we are part of SCI, we are also a peace organization, a non-violent organization. So we try to, if ever these incidents happen, we try to mitigate everything through non-violent ways, of course, and to keep calm everyone. And once again, we never had to be really confronted to that. We don't have violent behaviors. Also because we prepare the ground for this work. When we welcome young people together in a certain event, we ask them to be mindful of the fact that it's a multicultural place, that there might be some griefs, some trauma, like some people not very comfortable or anything, but we ask them to be mindful as we are, to just praise this diversity for a few moments. And the fact is also that we are pushing the narrative that Mitrovica and Kosovo, they are multicultural places, and that it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's you're rich when you're multiple cultures because you can learn from each other. And just the fact that we are saying this, no one really goes against this because everyone agrees that actually, yes, it's always been a multicultural place, and everyone says no, I don't have trouble with this community, it's just that, and then they start to say things, but never they would confront very directly for most of the people, and especially for the ones who accept to be part of our events. I see another question. What personalities do you need to be a peace promoter and volunteer across the world? That's a good one, and it's very hard to to answer because you need a lot of qualities, and once again it's you need to be mindful to not do bad stuff, to go against the rules that you should put yourself in. What I would say is that you need to be very patient, because you will be confronted to different things that can upset you a bit. First, the fact that you will be confronted to very sad stories from both sides, because we are talking about a recent war. So, of course, the families suffered a lot from this, from those dramatic events that happened 2 decades ago. But also because you might hear sometimes some discourse, some speech that you don't really like. You will hear people being very nationalistic, even being racist toward another community. And when you're doing volunteering, you know this other community, you have friends from this other community, and it's hard sometimes to hear those words. But you need to be patient and to explain very calmly why you disagree with this, and then once again to invite those people because they're the ones who need the most. You should invite them to come and meet the other community in a safe space, in some place where none of the people around would be threatened. And so you need to be friendly at the same time, patient and friendly. I think that's the two good things that you should do. And to be a good listener also, because people have a lot of story to tell, especially in places where there has been trauma and where peace is at stake. Uh, they have a lot of things to tell, and we should be a good ear for them to talk. Um, I see Pranvera asking, what did you get out of this volunteer experience? And was or is it worth it to volunteer abroad? So I answered already for the second question. Yes, it's very worth it. It's a very good experience. And what did I get? I got a lot of things because what you would expect is that I discovered Kosovo, I discovered the Balkans. I've never been before. I didn't even know much about the Balkans and Kosovo before. Now I feel like it's my home. It's been my home for 2 years. So um, I met a lot of wonderful people, and this is part of the experience. Is the relations you make, and I think they're for life because a lot of people that you meet, you will carry their talks and their loves with you for a long time. But also it makes you grow in a sense because all the qualities that I told before, being patient and a good listener, I'm not sure I was the perfect listener and very patient before, but I had to learn because of this work. And it taught me a lot to be able, yeah, to be part of a structure and of a project that is bigger than me, and that I'm trying to do the good thing here. I am lucky that in Gaia we have a lot of room for self-initiative. So, well, us volunteers, we are invited to, give our feedback on what the organization is doing, but also to actually propose new ideas. And I got a lot from this because I could try things and do the way we feel like we should do as young people. And that's also something that young people should have a say on how we should do stuff, and not being decided by other generations and other people far away from Mitrovica or from even Kosovo. And I learned a lot on how to work together with other people, how you deal with those very sensitive issues. And I think I it's very important for me for the future, for my future self, what I will do in life, because I would love to continue this kind of work. And this is something I discovered here. It's because I tried and I really appreciated what I was doing. It's how I discovered that actually I would like to continue doing this, working with youth and working about, the traumas of the past and what we can do together. So I always recommend volunteering for young people. May it be in your own country or in a foreign country. I think both experiences are very amazing, and you should jump in. And I know it's very scary. It was scary for me, once again, because I did not know anything, or at least I did not know much about Kosovo. I never went there before. But in the end, it was very worth it. And I decided to stay for more than a year. So it's actually a good sense that it's going good. Do you think after volunteering abroad, you have a lot to bring back home and build some concept that could promote sustainable solidarity network and heal the world? What good experiences you will bring home after all this time in Kosovo? So it's a bit related to the previous question. I think that indeed I will bring back home a lot of interesting thing. And one thing, for instance, is motivation. Now that I've seen what it is to work for peace, to work with young people, and that I could actually achieve something, this is something I will get with me. I will feel more confident actually going to places and doing something meaningful. And this is what you get also from volunteering, is that you don't just see things, you try out things, and you get the sense of what it means to help out, to build solidarity networks, and to be part of something bigger than you. And I encourage everyone to go volunteering for this reason also. It makes them a better person themselves. It's not only about helping out, and it's, of course, the main point of it is that you will be meaningful to other people, to other communities who need it. But it's also for you. You will learn a lot from this. You will get a sense of what it means to work, with your hands, with your brain, with everything, and to achieve something, to build something, and to create relationships that are meaningful. So there are 2 minutes left. Thank you a lot for your questions. To sum up, once again, I invite everyone to volunteer, but also I invite everyone to take a step towards the other people that you don't really know, and to make those efforts to bring people together for your sake, your own sake, for your own community to thrive and to just meet other communities, but also for a bigger scale peace work. It's because when you don't know each other, you have all those ideas, all those stereotypes about other people, how they act, what they think about, what's their history, but you don't know much unless you actually go and meet them. Have a coffee with them, have a beer with them, just talk, say that you want to learn from them, that you want to know their story. A lot of people, they like to tell their stories because that's what we do. We're human beings. We like to talk. We like to have beers and have fun. So it's actually something that can be achieved pretty easily. And I invite everyone from any country to actually do this and share those values of just meeting together, bringing the people together and have a chat. When you exchange, you understand more about what it means, peace. It's about understanding someone else. And I think we all have prejudice or stereotypes against someone, and sometimes we don't even know it. But when you pinpoint where is the problem, where is the issue, um, maybe maybe that's where you should go. And you need courage. It's a bit scary to do this, but you should go. You should go for it. You should go meet people. So it has been half an hour. The talk is done. Thank you very much for following. Thank you for the questions. It was very interesting questions. And I see some non-questions. Thank you very much for participating also. And once again, I invite you. I hope I inspired you a tiny bit. And I invite you to do this kind of work that is actually fun and nice to do all around you. Thank you very much, and see you someday.